Okay, welcome to this session dedicated to JASSS. I'm Flaminio Squazzoni. I'm the editor of JASSS. Since some years ago, I took over Nigel's role. And I'd just like to share, first of all, a news. This is the new logo of JASSS. And in a couple of versions, you'll see today. And it's, we wanted to give the meaning that JASSS is evolving, although you might probably see a little bit of familiarity between this logo and the previous one. So, we are changing, but taking on very good roots and remembering our genealogy as a journal. But we need to refresh a little bit. And probably also other things will be updated or revised or improved in the next few years. So for those of you who are not familiar or not so much with JASSS, JASSS is an interdisciplinary journal for the exploration and understanding of social processes and dynamics through computer simulation. And it has been established in 98, so it has a quite long story now. And we can proudly say that JASSS is the flagship journal for any scholar interested in applying computer simulation to social phenomena, issues, and questions and problems. And actually, currently, JASSS is owned by the ESA, by European Social Simulation Association, and it is published 4 times per year at the end of January, March, June, and October, and it's freely available to anyone on the web. So, and this is very, very important today. But remember or mind that JASSS is one of the probably pioneers of open access online journals ever, because it was open access and only online from the first issue in 98. So it's something that whenever I say this, people, wow, get a lot crazy, especially people discovering open access and open science just a few years ago. And it follows in a full tradition of social science journals. It follows a rigorous double blind peer review process. And since a few years, in order to support the editing cost that the journal has, we have shifted to a model where whenever an accepted author receives a notification, an editorial notification, he'll also receive requests for supporting JASSS paying a contribution for the open access fees, but this contribution is only on voluntary base, so it's not mandatory. If an author has institutional funds supporting open access and open science and open science movement or this kind of open science policy, we are very keen to be supported and to cover our editing cost. And this editing cost and this kind of funds have been used in the last years for probably familiar readers or aficionados of JASSS. You will probably have already noticed that we have improved significantly either at the HTML and the PDF version of the articles, and in many cases, and this has been probably done also thanks to the author's contribution in the last years. So, and this is just a little bit of information about the position of JASSS in terms of input measurements. And you see JASSS has been indexed in Web of Science and Scopus since decades now. And you see that from the recent release of the citation, the journal impact factor citation from Web of Science, we are quite well established. So we are just navigating around 2.2 impact factor, and our impact factor is increasing. And I don't know I know that this is important, especially for young scholars targeting our journal. And on the right side, you see the same more or less indicator from Scopus. And good confidence that the journal is going pretty well. Is established is the third quartile in top tiers in many kind of indicators in different kind of communities. And and other things. I mean, the composition of JASS is includes you see many editorial board members. I would like especially to mention the past editor Nigel Gilbert, the founder of JASS, and these associate editors who have been co-opted and nominated just a few months ago to help, especially the editor-in-chief, to manage and to provide the initial screening of the manuscript. And to JASS, we'd like to thank especially these associate editors who are working side by side with me about manuscripts and initial screening and sharing a little bit of first opinion about manuscripts. You know very well that now journals, in order to survive for sometimes also the increasing number of submissions, but especially to the risk of overburden referees and depressing or overexploiting, especially talented referees, journals tends to increase the severity and the rigor of the initial screening, and so I mean every kind of data we have shows that the number of deaths rejections are increasing overall in all the kind of journals, and this is not because editors are very nasty or but also because I mean there's a problem of very well probably reward and commitment of referees, and typically journals now want to protect talented referees for being overexploited with non-rigorous or non-solid or non-innovative submissions. And so these associate editors are helping me especially to the initial screening and to identify reviewers, and I'd like to thank a lot these guys for helping me. And you see the link I've shared here. You might probably also easily go on the journal website and find a lot of information about not only our journal, but our policy, and especially all the requirements for submissions. And you can find very efficiently any kind of detail you might probably wish to have in our journal website. And just a little bit of an overview about the typical JASS authors, especially, but also referees. And in general, JASS is international. You see here a snapshot showing you the submission by country that we received over time, and you see that United States and authors for United States and China are the most represented, and you see that countries like Iran, Australia, Japan, Canada, South Korea, Brazil, Turkey, India, Mexico. So this gives an idea that JASS is not, although it has an European origin, it is not an European flagship. It's a very international kind of journal. And I would like, also this is a paper that we published some years ago by Jonas Hauke, Iris Lorscheid, and Matthias Meyer, who reconstruct a little bit the topics of the paper and the evolution of the topics of the paper by looking at the keywords, abstracts, and content of the published articles in JASS. And you see that obviously JASS changed a little bit, or there's topics and which typically attract a lot of attention in the community, and this has changed over time, although you see probably some consistent patterns, especially in the interest on opinion dynamics, which has been probably one of the field where JASS was really leading the domain, or you work about cooperation, social norms, and this kind of stuff. For those of you who are not familiar with JASS in terms of which kind of research is published in JASS, obviously, I mean, it's very easy to go on the journal website and use the internal search and just browse the issues, and very easily and quite efficiently you might have a little bit of understanding about the type of research that we typically publish. But also this kind of paper is quite interesting to read, to have an opinion. It is updated until 2014, so it's 6 years ago. But more or less, I mean, the situation is changing obviously, but it's quite representative of the type of research that we, and the types of topics that typically JASS is interested to publish. Well, just a little bit of perspective, and then we open a discussion, hopefully. So which are, from the point of view of our, understanding of the evolution of our field, which are the most important trends in our journal, at least from my point of view. And what I see by just receiving, from 150 more or less articles, submissions per year, I see that as just reflects the evolution of our community, the community of social simulation in general, of scholars interested in applying computer simulation to the social sciences in general, that we see a shift from, more theoretical contributions to more empirical contributions. So we see an increasing number of empirical paper, or especially also quite interestingly, policy-oriented or applied type of paper, but still we have a consistent or considerable, a proportion of submission, including theoretical models, and I'm very proud of keeping this kind of room for theoretical contributions. But obviously, I mean, it seems that, and this also is reflected in many discussions that we are having in the social simulation WEC. And also, for instance, in whenever we run, a kind of training school for young scholars in the field, the interest now is trying to, make these kind of models more empirical, and to try to, calibrate models with empirical data, and try to, use model to understand empirical patterns and data. What we see is also, and this is very intriguing, probably is also reflect this kind of more empirically oriented and grounded models, is that we see an increasing number of submissions where ABM is part of the methodological instruments that scholars use for doing research. So we see a lot of integration between agent-based modeling and other kind of methods, or approaches, or techniques. And this also probably reflects this idea of integrating empirical data and modeling. And also you see probably from the social simulation, we have had some good sessions about, integrated qualitative and quantitative methods in agent-based modeling, or, how to integrate networks and agent-based models. Since that this is very, very important for doing complex research today, is to try to triangulate these different kind of methods. And ABM is sometimes a synthetic core of the synthesis between different kind of methods. And then a very robust trend, again, is the unlike the past. For those of you who probably were doing ABM in the 90s, we know very well that in the 90s, I mean, that what we were looking were aggregate dynamics of computer simulation, comparing, different kind of distribution or different kind of dynamics. And we were rarely we saw a lot of statistical, tools or methods or models used to estimate parameters, or to, validate findings, or to justify, or to try to map or explain results. Today, I mean, it's very hard to get published in a journal like JASSS without serious statistical tests on simulation output, and sometimes also serious statistical tests on parameter estimations. And this is very important. So you see probably also by looking at you just pick up randomly a recent issue of JASSS, and you pick randomly one of the first initial issues of JASSS, you find, for instance, that in the recent issue, you find a lot of appendices with a lot of statistical text corroborating the main findings of the manuscript with serious statistical test. And okay, this is also quite reasonable, and it's a sign of maturity of the field. And also last year we got a summer school on agent-based modeling, and all the scholars, all the young PhD students, mostly were interested to understand how to, estimate parameters, how to use statistical analysis or tests for corroborating the simulation findings. And finally, another very robust trend is the trend towards open code. And I just here on the bottom right, you see a reference to a paper, again, published in our journal by Marco Jansen, on try to mapping the practice of archiving model code in agent-based modeling. And by the way, there's also a very nice workshop tutorial, if I remember well, on Friday by Marco Jansen and other guys on the same topic, on how to improve replicability and replication and documentation and of models. And you see also the reference to ComSess, which is a public repository, online repository for where you can archive models, and you find a lot of agent-based modeling models archived in ComSess. And typically, the most recent robust patterns in our journal is to have the JASSS article linked or connected with the ComSess version of the model presented in the article, and we cross-link between ComSys and JASSS. And I personally try to, and with ComSys, try to also to understand how to develop better or tighter links between ComSys and JASSS in the future. So again, transparency is a kind of very important thing in our community. If you read the Marco Janssens paper, JASSS is leading also here. So it's the journal where you can find many more open codes than any other journals publishing agent-based modeling or computer simulation in the social science, and not only. And we're very proud to be on the frontier of this kind of movement about the open code. Although, however, mind that, this is not mandatory, so the policy must be intelligent and smart. So we always accept exceptions of the sharing the open code in case, for instance, a model is informed or calibrated with empirical data that has been collected through privacy agreements with some data providers. So it's just a matter of justify why. I mean, you are not sharing your code, and there are always, understanding about reasons why you might probably not be in a position of sharing in the public your code. But typically, best practice is to share in this. This increases the possibility of replication. This increases the possibility that our referees obviously rerun your model during peer review. And this, in general, is a very good constraint to allow you to build better model, to document better model, and to write better code. So more or less I have done, but before closing, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank some people very instrumental to JASSS. First of all, Nigel Gilbert. I saw Nigel around. I hope that he's here. So JASSS is Nigel, in the sense that Nigel is the entrepreneur behind JASSS. He's the creator of JASSS, and it has developed and shaped the vision of the journal since from the beginning, and the journal is still in a Nigel shadow. And I would like to thank Nigel also for not only the dedication of something like 17 years dedicated to the journal, and I know what this doesn't mean after taking over his job. But Nigel is still around, so he's still helping me. He's still providing support, which is not just philosophical, but also pragmatic and practical. So, I mean, I would like to thank Nigel first of all for this kind of incredible, contribution. I'd like also to thank the University of Surrey, which still is helping us, and NASA especially, which owns JASSS and supports JASSS, and with whom we have a very nice relationship with mutual respect and autonomy. And I love to have this kind of JASSS and NASA relationship. We have been also president of ESA for quite a number of years. And I would like to thank our associate editors for collaborating side by side with me, and all the members of the editorial board for commitment, passion. Every time I need something, I have someone helping me, and I'd like to thank you. So by the way, we have a regular turnover of editorial board members, and especially we use internal statistics about the commitment of young scholars in our journal in terms of accepting and delivering very good review reports, or and also maybe submitting very good papers. And typically this is the key point for being invited to join our board. So I would like to take the chance also to thank a lot of young scholars who have contributed massively on reviewing and helping me, and this is very, very important. I would like to also to thank all these kind of anonymous or not very close related to JASSS referees, incredibly spending the time to help and read the manuscripts and provide constructive comments. I'm very proud of the peer review at JASSS, by the way. And this is not just my job, obviously, as an editor, but this is a job of referees. And I can just, pick up very smart and reliable referees, but then the job is the referees, and I'd like to thank them for the incredible job they have done. And I will also to thank our editorial staff behind the scene, a couple of collaborators of mine who are helping in editing the journal. And again, I'm not alone in this kind of job. So 20 minutes is enough for celebrating myself and journal, and probably getting all the audience extremely bored. And so, I would like very much to have your opinion about the journal, and I'm here to respond to any kind of question, from the most detailed to the more philosophical one that you might have about the journal, even off the records. So thank you for your attention, by the way. Okay, I see some. Yes, okay, so someone has looked at the, so probably Nigel has gone after seeing the new logo. Let me see what Nigel thinks. Oh yes, Nigel is here. And Small just may consider slightly increasing its subtesting rate. That was something, and I pay huge. Yes, Rinke, you know, it's with this kind of rejection rate well, on the one hand is a mantra of journals now. So running a journal today is not easy. It was not probably easy also in the past, but it's not easy now. And where, you know, you find this kind of mantra about impact factors and metrics, and a lot of, you know, competitive kind of devices, which typically trigger also journals to be a little bit competitive in understanding the market niches or the competitive landscape. And this is not, and obviously for a number of reasons, you know, that the acceptance rate is considered one of the most important indicators of the quality of a journal. So the more we reject, the better the journal is supposed to be. So we are not dramatic, that we are not just rejecting or rejecting in general extremely higher than what expected. So, you know, a rule of thumb says that typically a very good journal accept 1 out of the 3 submissions. So something like 75% of rejection rate is something that typically is used as a rule of thumb to say, I mean, this is a high quality, medium high quality level, journal level. Obviously Science and Nature has something like 98 or 97. I don't believe that we reject a lot at the end. I confess that, as I said, that we have increased the initial screening, the severity of the initial screening, but this is for obvious reasons. And that obviously sometimes, I mean, we have personal stories, and obviously in general, the problem is that the most frustrating situation for us in general, either authors, referees, and editor, is whenever you have a manuscript which is stuck because, you know, referees are not convinced, are not really, because maybe sometimes they also are frustrated by the fact that the editor has required them to review that paper, which is probably not of a sufficient quality to be reviewed. And they accept maybe sometimes the task, but they keep that kind of task on the desk. And the more they keep the task on the desk, the more they get repressed, and the more they are delayed, and the more the editor does not find any plan Bs, or it's difficult to have a plan B, the more the paper is stuck, and this is frustrate the editor, the referees, and the author. And so, I mean, that's probably an editor and an editorial board have some, you know, informal testing knowledge to try to spot initially which is the kind of manuscript that as the possibly fails into this kind of destiny, which is something that is very dramatic, because at some point you can't probably reject a paper after 1 year of of peer review, and you're not convinced to take it. It's very frustrating. So we are doing our best. And by the way, we are also, again, if you browse an issue of JASSS, you see that there's a lot of diversity in terms of articles. Please also note the diversity in terms of authors and academic affiliations. And we are open we proudly publish paper by PhD students, and that who probably could not publish the same paper in top journals in their field without maybe a senior supporting them. So I don't see a very good problem about that. But obviously, I also have frustrating personal stories about my own paper rejected by other journals, so I know very well. Okay, let me see if there's okay, Gary was mentioning about this paper that we published with collaborators of mine years ago about trying to understand the flow of citation in and out from JASSS article to other journals. And we found that, and probably the situation is not much different today. The paper is was published in 2013, if I remember well. Data were until 2012, so quite 8 years ago. Probably the situation has improved a little bit, but obviously my impression is that JASSS is stronger in terms of input in non-social science community. It's more, it has been probably more instrumental to diffuse certain type of researching about modeling, certain type of attitudes and types of research within the social community than, or to leading up, vice versa, I'm sorry, to bring social science knowledge towards all the community than back. And situation is probably, I don't know if Nigel has some idea about what can be done. Probably we can target maybe special issues, something like that. But the problem is that also minded agent-based modeling in certain type of community has become less, you know, more accepted than before. And so maybe sometimes, I mean, scholars prefer to publish in their own kind of disciplinary journal that on JASSS. And so this is not dramatically a sign of failure, but probably also a sign of good good achievement in our idea. But surely it seems that JASSS has played more the role of bringing social science towards all the community than back. This is something that is probably still true, but nice will be to rerun this analysis with more recent data and understand if this is still true. So for instance, it's JASSS has more citation from Science, Nature for top journals, PNAS or the PLOS or this kind of general journal that, for instance, from the American Economic Review or the American Journal of Sociology or this type of disciplinary journal, which in principle should be more interested to our research. Okay, good question, Rafael, about the competition. Yeah. Obviously, the journal landscape is changing, and again, it's always a very interesting. It's like we are part of an ecology in terms of journals. The journals are embedded in an ecological landscape, and they are adapting to each other. We reach kind of symbiotic or competitive or antagonist kind of interaction. So very good. I know that you like probably this analogy from ecological systems. And yes, that's always changing. There are, for instance, years ago, probably that one of the journals, for instance, that I was looking as a, to try to have an idea about the position of JASSS was, for instance, Social Science Computer Review. It was years ago, a kind of journal publishing some computer simulation studies, and it was probably well embedded in social science circle, especially in the US. And at some point for internal policy, Social Science Computer Review decided not to publish anymore any theoretical papers. So they only want empirical research, and they have changed it from competing with us to competing in big data journals, for instance. So now, for instance, Social Science Computer Review, I don't see, for instance, that journal as one of the sister brothers journals of JASSS, for instance. So it's always changing a little bit. And for instance, advances in complex systems 4 years ago, it was really sometimes close to JASSS, and now I don't see that journals again are very. So the problem, the question is that we have made a decision, and this was a decision that we made years ago, which was to defend the position of JASSS as the main flagship, main specialized journals in social simulation, especially with a focus on agent-based modeling. And at some point, we internally, among the boards, I remember discussions with someone defending this idea to be more open to big data kind of topics, but we defended this kind of. So we are a specialized journal. So that's probably the main point of the journal. So this was the strategy to defend our identity in the changing landscape in which, big data and this kind of stuff where journal was really. So for instance, you see also this kind of difference between computational social science and social simulation. So it typically reflects this kind of problem of identity, but also position. And so any other questions, comment? We have time until 10 to 6. So what do we like to see in JASSS that you don't? Okay, yes, we are always happy to have people volunteering to review, Rikai. So you know, you can volunteer yourself. You can register yourself as a reviewer in our system, but also write an email with your CV, and I will consider you. Okay, thank you very much for your help. We always need. So now we have something like, you know, I remember the internal statistic that Nigel was able more or less to ensure something like three point something, sometimes even 4, probably reviewing the old times now. I mean, we are very from 2 to 3. Sometimes we also close with 2 reviewers instead of 3, which is a golden standard. So we always need and appreciate dedicated reviewers.
So if you allow me a comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would say for people like me who are working more in practical or industry related things, I miss some more practical oriented or problem solving modeling, that type of things. Yeah, I know, of course, you just have to pick up one of your issues to see that you are more, maybe more theoretical focus. I would say that, you know, I miss more practical problem solving things from reality, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. The application of computer simulation to real problem and to organizations. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is obviously we can't, you know, elicit papers that we don't receive. So we are never, we receive sometimes, but we tend, I mean, we receive more in terms of practical, more papers try to present tools, try to present simulation tools and this is something sometimes is interesting, but sometimes without, so practical, but not to solving real problem, but to solve problems of model makers. And we receive a lot of these submissions. I see that the problem is that the question is, do you find other journals publishing agent-based modeling applied to real problem?
Well, yeah, you are right. I mean, I think this is a common issue in the journals that maybe, of course, I'm not an editor. I don't know what are you receiving. But what I know is that we are social scientists. We owe our work to the society. So we need to try to think of what is the value we are delivering to society in terms of what can be done with our models, right? Of course, this is my personal point of view, okay? So
that's good point, good point. So I mean, it's discussion that probably also is around during the COVID situation, which certain kind of models were used systematically, directly in 1 minute to inform a kind of important public policy decision. So I mean, there's evidence that these kind of models sometimes are used, and sometimes we might also probably criticize the way they are used sometimes. And the debate about the COVID models are probably reflecting a little bit about this kind of thing. But we have something maybe also we have something on the policy side, which is something very important. So how we use agent-based modeling for policy purposes, for policy making in general. This is something that has been probably is increasing, has increased attention, and we publishing recently some very interesting policy papers. If you think about practical problems like an organization has to solve, a problem, yes, it's something that probably is missing. But we again, it's probably something that whenever people are using those models for practical purpose, they don't see the value of or they believe that they don't have any value for scientific purposes. They don't write a paper, or the paper is just written in a way that is not contributing to any kind of scientific insights, and sometimes it's very difficult to find a good compromise between the two.
Yeah, but on the other side, I guess there is a high demand from the policy side to see all these modelers work, all this scientific community, what can stand for. I mean, you know, what this community can deliver to society, right? I have been working a lot of years with, you know, with politics, people taking decisions, and you know, you cannot imagine what are the tools these people are using, right? So I guess that there is a high demand in society, in the public sector or policy making, to be able to use this type of tools. So I think this also our responsibility to work on this other, maybe less scientific way, but more applied side of the coin, you know.
Well, I mean, that's Nigel. Yeah, I was waiting for Nigel has experience about that. So please, Nigel.
It might be that it's not that JASSS doesn't like such articles, but that it's actually very hard to write those kinds of articles. There are two reasons for that. One is, very often if you're solving actual practical and especially policy problems, the policymakers want you to keep all that stuff confidential. The last thing they want that is their advice that they're receiving to be published in the public domain. So that's certainly my experience, that we often have to sign non-disclosure agreements in order to do this kind of practical work. And the second point, I think, is that that makes it difficult is that just reading about a very specific application of a model is not in itself particularly interesting, except for the few people who are interested in that particular domain. What is interesting is the general lessons that can be learned from that activity. So writing such papers is quite tricky because you've got often a case of one. You've got just your particular model, but what you want to draw from that are general lessons and to justify those general lessons. So those are just two of the difficulties which might account for at least one of the reasons why these kinds of very applied papers don't come to JASSS very often. I'm quite sure that if they did come and they are good quality, JASSS would be very happy to publish them.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. But if you browse the JASSS, I don't know, I mean, if you search internally among the JASSS records, you find some also recent policy-oriented models. I just remember a few of them. So, I mean, there are examples of good models applied to especially public policy or resource community management, which are probably very interesting too. But exactly as Nigel was saying, because there's a theoretical kind of contribution, which is just, and it's not the specific problem solved, but it's helps to inspire other kind of possible application in other fields or domains. So that's a very, very, very good point. And certainly, I don't know if Nigel agrees, but in our community, in terms of agent-based modeling in general, there's also probably a little bit of, the fact that we are dealing with complex, complex systems, complex adaptive system in general, systems which are complex in terms of nonlinear interaction, also makes us a little bit more critical or self-critical about the type of models we are doing. And before being so ambitious to apply those models into to solve the practical problems, we are probably a little bit more self-critical before getting it, instead of some other traditional modeling which they are probably have more experience of. They are just not dealing at all with complexity, and so they are very keen to say, okay, increase tax rate, you got that. So it's very easy, just a recipe of the very small, simple models, and they will just have these kind of solutions. But mind that, for instance, Francisco, mind that there's a connection that is also, it's just a minority now, but it seems to me that it's a little bit of developing, is the connection between operational research and agent-based modeling. So there's a connection, there's a small community using agent-based modeling for supply chain management and this is, for instance, an example of you find some examples of models which are applied in the kind of proposed. And so it's not so dramatic in my understanding, obviously.
Yeah, well, of course, operational management or research. They are also starting to use this type of modeling. But I was referring in any case to the social science type of experiments. And I would say that if we go to any industry in the world, we will find not only very specific problems that are only interesting for that type of industries, but that we can gather conclusions that we can apply to a broader field of interest. I don't share that point of view that if we focus on industry, we are only going to find 2 or 3 people interested. There are very huge problems. The COVID-19 is just an example that is not an epidemiological problem only, right? It's a social problem. We have that type of problems in many industries that they are also interesting because they will allow us to make some interdisciplinary or cross-feeding learning in other industries, right? But
yes, true. No, this is a very problem. So there's a lot of understanding in our community that that our models have the potential of illustrating the complexity of a certain kind of problem, helping stakeholders and policymakers and practitioners to improve their knowledge about the system in which they are embedded. So this is something that we know very well. But for instance, also one of the problems is that this also is built upon a bunch of killer applications in which bam, these are very papers which creates really this kind of and we still are probably in a situation where these kind of killer applications are still not probably there. And
I would
that's my impression.
Yeah, I would add it. Maybe this is because AVM or complexity science is more dominated by computational profiles, right? Of course, computational profiles are not domain experts. So I think domain experts, like myself, I will consider a domain expert, and I'm not a computational profile. We are, in terms of numbers, quite less than computational profiles. So maybe this is the reason why there's more methodological or theoretical. I don't know if you share this point of view.
No, this is a good point, but I mean also on the other end, you see that at least in Europe, agent-based modeling typically is part of sometimes big projects funded by European Commission or agencies, and in those kind of projects, you see collaboration between different experts. So sometimes, I mean, most of us, are doing agent-based modeling. Nigel is an example, but not only him. So that and part of a large team of experts in which there are different kind of experts. So this is just it's in my understanding is something that is still going on, and so we still need to have this kind of probably killer application that is perceived as an example, an extraordinary example. We still, also whenever we teach agent-based modeling, we are still using canonical models like Schelling segregation model or others very canonical, and this is because also the field is strongly theoretical probably. Yeah, I know this is one of the, but I mean it's just a matter of time, and it's very good hopes about the future agent-based modeling in terms of having an impact in real life in general. And well, yes, Martin, let's just reply to Martin as well. I mean, Martin, you were thinking about the fact that we still are appreciate theory, of course, and yes, it's you're right. I mean, one of the intersections more productive probably for agent-based modeling is the ecological science. And so, for instance, yes, the agent years ago probably I will not perceive it as journals in environmental sciences as very close to JASSS. Now we still have, and by the way, we also increased the number of publications from colleagues in environmental science in social ecological systems. And you also see, I mean, also in the Social Simulation Week, one of the invited lecturers was one of Maya was one of these kind of leading this field in Europe. So yes, environmental sciences and by the way, also methodological speaking, all these kind of ODD protocols and many methodological papers were recently published by especially people in environmental sciences, and so this is a very strong field popping up, and
in a way it was also a contribution to the discussion with Francisco, why there are so not enough empirically problem-solving papers. Maybe then the authors of such papers have others, like journals like ecological modeling papers that they could also contribute, which would then perhaps be more in their domain. This was just a contribution to the discussion also with Francisco.
Yes, but I pick it up because it was a good point. So about indexing, yes, I will try to understand. Well, say that. Oh, okay, this kind of index for computer science. Yes, of course, we can try it. So JASSS is quite well indexed, but I will try to investigate. I mean, this kind of position of JASSS in these computer science indexes. Any other question or comment? Nigel, do you like the new logo? It was a surprise. Quite similar to the old one, you know.
Actually, I prefer the old one, but then
yeah, remember. So the old one,
aren't I?
the old one was a subject of a long quarrel between this between our team and this kind of designers team. Where it's, okay, no, it was not that bad. Leaving, you know, something like a church in the Venetian. They saw that this kind of was and so yes, I like this kind of Venetian church in the now it's just that just to inform you that we are just investing a little bit and expect some news about the merchandise, about t-shirts and a little bit of JASSS to, you know, especially to thank our most talented referees, by the way, and so use it internally as a reward for our most talented and more committed referees, and you know, and
talking about thanks, I'm sure that that all of the people here would like to thank you, because, as you said, you know, being an editor of this journal is not an easy life, which I can certainly vouch for. So thank you for doing that, and for steering it so successfully. I think while you've been editor, it's not an easy thing to both do the day-to-day job. And to do the strategy, and you're doing fantastically. So,
oh, thank you, Nigel. I mean, I got a good school from you, you know. And yeah, thank you, Gary. Yeah. Yes, the model submitted to the Open ABM archive is DOI'd, and it can be also peer reviewed, by the way. So the option of ComSys now is also to require or ask for internal peer review. So I mean, the models, whenever is uploaded to ComSys, has an internal peer review about you know, 2 or 3 kind of factors, including the quality of the code, but not obviously the link between the code and the paper, or really the kind of the quality of the models. It's just, you know, the quality of the code, and if there's everything's running properly and this kind of stuff. Obviously, I mean, one of the points, which is I must confess something that we need to explore a little bit about this kind of, whenever we have this kind of vision of lab, or this kind of complex psychology around JASSS, which is, for instance, the role of online repository. It's also try to design the relationship between the journal and, for instance, those repositories where models are documented and available is not easy at all. And don't expect, obviously, the responsibility is for the journal, is not for these kind of open online archives about the quality of a paper and possible mistakes of the models and this kind of stuff. So we still are the only responsible for that. But obviously, more collaboration between these entities will be something very, very, very good at some point. Sometimes it's very easy, I mean, to require referees to rerun a model, and this is more, you know, a constraint that an author must have in mind before submitting, to write good code, to document his or her model well, to make everyone in a position to rerun easily his or her model. It's more self-constrained. Then, you know, replication comes, then probably in a long run, bad code is eliminated, bad models or not documented are eliminated, but this is something that's very difficult for a journal to consider. At some point, maybe probably journals will have, you know, now some journals have a statistics experts to check, you know, internal, and then maybe we might probably at some point have an ABM expert to check really the model, to rerun the model before peer reviewing the paper. That could be fantastic, but obviously it's something that requires a little bit of, you know, step forward that direction. So 8 minutes to the plenary session, and if there's no any other question.
Well, I have a question here.
Please.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm looking at JASSS journal, and I'm not seeing any paper on COVID. I think HMS modeling has a lot of potential for this stuff, but I'm not seeing any here.
Yes, there are two forthcoming in just in these few weeks. Two are, we are editing the first two COVID-related papers, and that will be published in a few weeks. And however, and this was an editorial decision. So you know very well that many journals have streamlined peer review for or created fast tracks for COVID-related papers. And for obvious reasons, and I don't blame them, so it's totally legitimate, we decided not to. So we decided deliberately not to fast track any COVID-related paper. And not for, because we are eyebrows, elite journals, no, because I mean, it's, we were seeing a little bit of too fast peer review, and so we were more interested to attract good papers from authors who were not trying to jump on the COVID train like beasts. And this is my understanding on the long run will be valuable and will be worth. Whenever we will see these kind of two papers coming now, there's still probably 2 or 3. So I guess probably we are, I don't remember exactly, 5 or 6 COVID-related papers. One couple have been rejected, probably, if I remember well. 2 have been rejected, and we have something like probably 4 now. They are only good. They're solid science. They have been peer-reviewed. The one that the first two forthcoming in these 2 weeks have undergone 3 rounds with 3/4 reviewers. So I'm very proud of that. And authors have been obviously were, you know, say, oh God, I want to have my paper out. You know, it's a time. But at the end, I received personal emails from the accepted authors after 3 rounds of reviews, thanking me for the rigorous peer review of our journal and very satisfied for the improvement of the paper. These kind of things that the world is can be changed in your paper. If the paper is out 5 days yearly, it's completely crazy. So we decided to keep you know, our line, and I do believe that this is probably the best decision we could make. But wait, and there will be some COVID-related paper.
Yeah, thank you for the comments.
But this is a very good question, by the way. So thank you.
Yeah, I totally understand to keep the quality of the journal like in high and not just publishing everything. But the thing is, for example, I wrote a paper on COVID using HMS modeling. But when I'm looking at JASSS and I'm seeing there is not a single paper there yet, that's a little bit discouraging. That's my point of view. But I understand, yeah, like the priority is with keeping the quality high. But that was just my point of view I wanted to share.
No, it's a very good point. Yeah, I know this could be probably discourage potential authors to submit. That's your question. So I'm an ABM, I have a model, and I see that JASSS did not publish any COVID-related paper, so I just target my paper in another journal. This is the point.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This could be probably yes, an implication, a negative implication of this decision. But on the other end, the other was fast tracking peer review and having 100 attracting probably too much papers and I don't know. I mean, it's been a decision which has been shared, and I will defend this decision.
Yeah.
And whenever, please, let's just have a look at these 2 papers who are which are probably very forthcoming in the next few weeks in the in-press part of the journal to be included in the October issue. Please, can you just have a quick glance of this paper and send me an email about what you think about it, about those papers?
Sure.
If time was worth waiting for these two papers, I'm sure that you will say great papers. That's my.
I would also. Sure.
Okay, let's hope for that.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. We need to turn everything off and jump into the plenary session. We have a very important plenary speaker, by the way. Very proud of Anima, and I would like to thank you all for your contribution. I have learned a lot, and so I mean. As Nigel before, we are open, so send an email and contact us. We will reply surely about your questions about the journal, your ideas about journal development. Please be active, okay? So, thank you very much.